You open this door with the key of reason. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of truth. A dimension of freedom. A dimension of joy. You're moving into the land of both the ideal and the real, of the possible and the actual. You've just crossed over into the Capitalist Corner.
Where reason meets reality, welcome to the Capitalist Corner.
Welcome, everybody, to the Capitalist Corner. I'm your host, Michael Liebowitz, and I am all on my own today. So, as usual, whenever that happens, I could very much use your help with your questions and your comments. They are all very, very much appreciated. There is an episode out right now on the A Rational Egoist where I interviewed the great Persephone. I highly recommend that you check that out. That was great. Please remember that we absolutely love super stickers and super chats. Very, very much appreciated whenever you can do them. So I was reading an article this morning from Reason Magazine, and it had to do with... I forgot to turn that down again. Persephone is going to kill me. The article was about, it was a story where a guy was shot in the leg out in Minnesota. It was one of the protesters. Or not one of the protesters. Let me get this thing ramped up. It's kind of difficult when I'm on my own, folks. I apologize. You have my humblest of apologies. So the prosecutors admit that the Department of Homeland Security account of an ICE shooting was based on lies. This is an article from Jacob Sullum, and it is in Reason Magazine. So what had happened, it was the case of a Julio C. Sosa Celis. He's an unauthorized U.S. resident from Venezuela who was shot in the leg by an Immigration and Customs Enforcement agent in Minneapolis on January 14th. So the story was that this guy violently assaulted the agent, who simultaneously was ambushed and attacked by two other Venezuelan nationals. So somebody just texted me and asked why I wasn't on yet. That's an interesting dynamic. I think that it has to do with this. X evidently is having trouble with its posting, so I guess I'm going to have to do it manually. Anyways, so the video footage didn't support the actual claim that the agents were putting out there. And they're not actually telling us what that information was saying or, what the video evidence was showing. But they are saying that it turns out that the official account was not true. Now, we've seen from a lot of this stuff, the claims about terrorism and the claims about, assassins. The guy has a gun in his pocket. They say he approached them armed. They called the woman with the, in the car, domestic terrorist. I don't know about you, but I'm not exactly inspired with confidence in the accounts given by the executive branch of the government, including ICE. Now, there's also a story today from the Daily Economy, and it talks about how ICE's warrant shortcut violates the Constitution. Now, we've discussed this before, but I want to discuss it again, and I want to discuss it in relation to the former article where the government agents, at least, were lying. Now, those agents have since been put on leave, but nonetheless, they were lying initially. So the article starts and it says, ICE claims agents can enter private homes using their own paperwork without asking a judge first. The Fourth Amendment was written for moments like these. So the idea is that they have these judicial warrants that are not judicial warrants. I'm sorry. They have administrative warrants that are coming from the executive branch that are authorizing them to arrest people that are here illegally or alleged to be here illegally. That is a civil matter. It's not a criminal matter, and that's very important to keep in mind. Now, ICE is claiming in a a memo that came out that was leaked, and they were claiming that these warrants authorize them to enter third-party houses if they believe somebody is inside. So the article says here, a valid search warrant isn't just a piece of paper with an official seal. It's an authorization saying there is probable cause for the government to act. Probable cause is not certainty, but it's not a hunch. It's a set of specific facts. And the author goes on and he explains how there's been mistakes where people were at the wrong house looking for somebody, for the right person, or they go to the right house and it contains it doesn't actually house the person. And because of this, you want to prevent mistakes. So you need probable cause, and you want to have a separate agency signing off on them. You don't want the same team that approves the warrants to be the team exercising the warrants. Now, especially this is salient for me because of the lying that has been done by the current administration and by their agents. So, and the author of this article sums it up very succinctly. He says the Fourth Amendment demands neutrality precisely because the risk of error is so predictable and commonplace. And he talks about administrative search warrants provide none of this security. So they try to rely on some case law. One such case was Abel v. United States. But in this case, agents did not use an administrative warrant as a constitutional key to an occupied home, rather. This was the case of a guy that was arrested. He was staying in a hotel, and then after he was removed, with coordination and approval from the hotel, they went and searched his room. That is not the same thing as looking for a guy in a third party's home without a warrant from a judge and you entered this house. Not the same thing. Another case that they refer to is this Payton v. New York. Here, the court held, and I'm quoting now, police generally may not make a warrantless, non-consensual entry into a suspect's home to effect a routine felony arrest. The court held police generally may not make a warrantless. Okay. Payton says where police have a judicial arrest warrant, though, they need not have a separate search warrant before entering the suspect's own home. Two things. ICE warrants are not judicial arrest warrants. They're not criminal. They're civil, as we already said. Secondly, it does not authorize them to go into a third party's home. So basically what they want to do is cherry pick, take the various aspects of administrative law and criminal law to suit their interests, to enter third-party homes looking for what they're claiming are illegal immigrants. Now, Speaker of the House, what's his name? Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson basically said to require this kind of warrant will slow the process down. Yeah, that's the whole fucking point, is to slow the government down, to restrain the government. The point here isn't to make things as easy as possible for the government to enter people's homes. It's to make sure, damn sure, that they ought to be doing this, that there's probable cause to do it. It's not supposed to be a what do they call, skeleton key, where they can just enter anyone's home that they want for whatever reason. This is like Liberty 101. It's vital to understand that when you are in your home, you ought to be secure, and the government ought not to be just coming in based on an administrative warrant issued by an administrative agency to their own agents to go track down somebody that their only crime is they're in the country illegally. I'm curious what you folks think of this. Do you think that this is okay? Does it violate the Constitution? I would say this. It does violate the Constitution. It violates the Fourth Amendment. But even if it did not, I would be opposed to it. First of all, I'm opposed to anti-immigration laws anyway. But I really think that they ought to make a very strong case in order to be able to enter somebody's home. That is serious business. That is the king of your castle. That's your domain. That is where you ought to feel safe and not subject to government goons entering your place. So I am interested to find out what everybody thinks about that. In addition, so this morning's news, there were a couple articles in Axios, and there was a video from Axios that we're moving closer to war with Iran. Iran has closed the Straits of Hormuz, which is the throughway by which, I think 20% of the world's sea-borne oil is transmitted, delivered. So, it's serious business. The administration is in negotiations with the Iranians. There's no telling whether it's going well or not. They've deployed an armada. The saber rattling is already taking place. So I figured that, maybe we could do a little talking about the history of this conflict. Now, let me just say right off the bat, I'm not an expert on Iranian history or on Iranian U.S. relations. I've done some searching in the past. I did some searching this morning through both AI, articles, that sort of thing. So it's a complicated history. And let me just state at the outset that I absolutely think that the Iranian regime is evil. They're an evil theocracy. I think theocracies are bad automatically. They do promote and support terrorism, and they have attacked U.S. Personnel and U.S. interests. So let me just state that at the outset, that I'm not going to be arguing that Iran are the good guys. So up until the 1950s, the United States had very little relations with what was Persia, what became Iran. In 1951, Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh, he nationalized Iran's oil industry. This was previously some of these fields and some of the oil was owned by the British government, and this guy nationalized it. Now, importantly, the elections in Iran that got this guy elected are not what most people would consider very democratic. I mean, but they were to an extent. It was a constitutional monarchy headed by the Shah. This guy's party gained descendants in parliament. Parliament is basically elected through democratic means, but with restrictions on voting. Women were excluded, that sort of thing. And the Shah appointed this guy prime minister. He nationalizes the oil. Now, in 1953, the CIA and British intelligence backed a coup that removed Mossadegh from office. And now this coup damaged the U.S. reputation in Iran. We basically said, we don't like the leader that you've somewhat chosen. We're going to put our own in place. Experts and people disagree about just how brutal and oppressive the Shah was, but you're basically a king. I have no problem, believing that this guy was fairly brutal in his suppression of dissidents. Now, Mark and I had a discussion here, and Mark said, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody in the audience, or Mark, if you're watching, that this guy was allied with the Soviets, this Mossadegh, and that we needed to get involved to stop the Soviets. According to everything I read this morning, that's simply not true. That the vast majority of experts say, no, this guy was not pro-Soviet. He was an Iranian nationalist. All right, so now in 1979, you have the Iranian Revolution, and Ruhollah Khomeini comes to power. The theocracy. The Shah is gone. This guy takes over, and they take hostages, American hostages, from the embassy. Obviously, that's an act of war, if you ask me, when you raid a foreign country's embassy and you take people hostage. So that is an act of war, granted. So by 1981, relations collapsed. Now, since then, I also wanted to see how often the Iranians have attacked Americans or American interests. So we have the 1983 Beirut Embassy and Marine Barracks bombing. Now, the U.S. Marines were in Beirut on a peacekeeping operation. In 1984 through 85, there were kidnappings of Americans in Lebanon. 96, the Iranians backed the bombing of the Khobar Towers. They were attacking U.S. personnel in Iraq in the Iraq War. There were a plot to assassinate the Saudi ambassador in D.C. The Iraqi militia attacked the United States embassy in Iraq. They are still funding terrorism. There were plots, from what I understand, they wanted to assassinate the president of the United States. So, yes, they are state sponsors of terrorism. Predominantly, the terrorist groups that they back are Shia or anti-Israel groups. Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis over there in Yemen. These are the groups that they back. They, according to everything I've seen before today and today, do not back Al-Qaeda and do not back ISIS, as those are Sunni Muslims. So Iran had nothing to do with 9/11. Now, there's also the problem of instances where the United States has attacked Iran. For instance, we backed Iraq in the Iraq. Well, first of all, you can go back into the backing of the coup that took place to get their prime minister out. You also had the backing of Iraq in the Iran-Iraq war. There's this tanker war, direct naval clashes in 87. There was the bombing of an Iran Air Flight 655 in 1988, but we've said was accidental. Sanctions and covert operations, strikes on Iranian-backed militias. So it's not. I don't want to. It's not about. There's no clear sense in who started it, because obviously we started this with them in '53, right, with the coup. What's it? 26 years later, in '79, they take our hostages, and then there's sort of this back and forth. But they are an evil regime. There's no doubt about that. So let's take that into consideration. So now, and also, by the way, history notwithstanding, if a country is an existential threat to the United States, I don't really care about the history from 70 years ago. We need to take that country out if they're going to take us out otherwise. However, there's these two guys that I came across today, and I just Googled expert conversations, and I deliberately asked for right-wingers so that it can't be said, well, these are just left-wing doves, for right-wingers, and what they thought the results would be of a war in Iraq. In Iran. And it's not good. It really isn't. It's not as if we're going to swoop in there like we did in Venezuela. We're going to take out the regime and then democracy is going to prevail. There's no organized democratic opposition that's ready to take power over there. There's no sign that the military is going to betray the theocratic leaders in Iran, the mullahs in Iran. What you're likely to have is another oppressive regime rise up. We're certainly going to have Americans die if we go to war with them. And as it said here in the chat, I don't trust the Trump administration to execute a war efficiently or to do a good job there. But you have to weigh this. You are talking about a country that's called called for death to America, death to Israel, we're the great Satan, yada, yada. And they obviously have nuclear ambitions, or at least that's what's, claimed by our government, who I have a hard time trusting. Forgive me, but they've been known to be wrong and to lie. So At the very least, I would like to see debates in Congress. I would like to see Congress declare war and not have it done unconstitutionally by the president. Yes, this may hamper a war effort. It may prolong it. But much like in the previous case where we were discussing immigration and search warrants, war is something that you don't want to rush into. That we want to make sure that the country is behind it, and the best way to do that is through the country's representatives, allow them to debate the issue, and then, and then declare the war. That would be the way to do it. That would be my preference. I could be swayed that we should declare war. I'm not convinced of that yet. I could be swayed, but I'm not going to be swayed that we should do so unconstitutionally. So Akira Felix says, theocratic dictatorships have no right to not be attacked, though. I understand that they can do it, but it's not legitimate. A bully can get beaten up by someone, and he can try again. So, that it's, while it's true that there's no right for brutal dictators to not be attacked, the question is it in the interest of us to attack them? What is to be gained by doing so? And I say, well, if we're going to violate the Constitution, nothing's to be gained, because that's just a further road, further down the road toward a totalitarian state that we don't want. And I know they've been doing it for, decades upon decades. That doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it good. And Akira Felix says the fact that this administration lies constantly and hides things is why you shouldn't want them to enter into a foreign conflict. Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. And Ray says having an administration with no interest in delivering justice to Iran is even less epistemologically sound. We're stuck with either less than ideal action versus inaction and even sanction. Well, deliver justice to Iran. Let me just say, Race, in response to that, there's a lot of bad actors on the world stage that justice couldn't be done to. And we simply can't go around delivering justice to everybody out there. The question has to be, is Iran an imminent threat to the United States? And are they such a threat that it's worth going and taking them out at the cost of the blood and treasure that will undoubtedly cost? And what's going to happen once we do that? I mean, what's going to take over? Is it going to be worse? Is it going to be better? Is it going to be an ally? Is it going to be democratic? And from what I've seen, the answer is no. Now, I know there's more arguments. Like I said, I'm not an expert. But I'm just not convinced that there's an overwhelming case to send Americans to die in a fight against Iran, which is what we'd ultimately be talking about. And as somebody who supported the war in Iraq over 20 years ago, now I didn't vote, and I just supported it in my head and in conversations with prisoners and guards, I'm very sensitive to the fact that we were lied to. Or not, I'm not going to say lied to. We were misled by the government. They may have been wrong. I have no evidence that Bush deliberately lied or Cheney deliberately lied, but they certainly were wrong in their assessment both of weapons of mass destruction, of what would happen once we took out Saddam. Taking out Saddam led to Al-Qaeda in Iraq, which led ultimately to ISIS. Backing Saddam earlier strengthened him. We backed the Mujahideen in Afghanistan to get rid of the Russians. That place ends up getting taken over by the Taliban. These are complicated matters, and it's not simply a matter of, let's just go have justice. I'm all for justice, but the whole reason we want to practice justice is because it's in our best interest to do so, right? Justice isn't a deontological command to do our duty. Justice is a practical virtue that the principle of which we implement because it's in our interest to do so. And it has to be proven that it's in our interest to have the Trump administration go to war with Iran. How easy is it to be able to topple the regime. And then remember, what's going to follow? What is the proof that it's going to be a democratic country, or it's going to be a country that is allied with us? Kira Felix says the Constitution is going to get absolutely destroyed by Trump if he gets boots on Iran. The precedent will lead to President AOC sending troops to defend Palestine. Keep that in mind. It may. I don't know. I'm not a very big prediction guy. Mr. Deagle, nothing I have seen indicates that the United States can take out Iran by air. Nothing has said that. I would love to know, I mean, what's the source of that claim that you could get rid of topple the regime with airstrikes? Unless you're talking about nuclear, which nobody is going to go for anywhere. So, we do have a lot of issues going on in Iran, and I'm very curious. Yeah, Israel did damage, Mr. Deagle. There's a difference between doing damage to a nuclear weapons program and taking out a regime. They're not the same. And even if you could do it, if you're not there to facilitate the transformation of the country, then who knows what's going to happen? We simply do not know. So it's problematic, to say the least, what is happening there. So anyways, very interested. What are your thoughts? What are your feelings about this issue? Please let me know in the chat. And also, please remember that we love super chats and super stickers. Akira Felix says, I'll go for nuclear, but I agree with Michael. There's no way the government uses nuclear. No freaking way. All right, so I read an article this morning in the Epoch Times by Jeffrey Tucker, the economist. And I'll get to his article in a moment, but the article got me thinking about the concept of creative destruction, which is an economic concept. And the creative destruction, for those who don't know, and I'm going to read this. This isn't my words. I looked this up. It's a term coined by the economist Joseph Schumpeter in the 1940s to describe the engine he believed drove capitalist economies forward. The core idea is that capitalism progresses not through gradual, smooth improvement, but through a constant cycle of old industries, technologies, and business models being dismantled and replaced by new ones. Schumpeter borrowed the phrase from Marx, but gave it a positive spin. Where Marx saw capitalism tearing itself apart, Schumpeter saw that very turbulence as its greatest strength. The destruction is the collapse of established ways of doing things, the decline of the horse-drawn carriage industry, or the collapse of blockbuster video, and the creation is what replaces them, the automobile, streaming service, and whatever comes next. The mechanism works through entrepreneurship and innovation. A new product, process, or business model enters the market, and if it's generally better, outcompetes existing players. Now, of course, there are those who don't like this idea. Nathaniel Branden addressed this in his wonderful essay, The Divine Right of Stagnation in The Virtuous Selfishness, in that there are people that simply don't want to grow. They don't want to change. We can see this in resistance to new technology. We see this in resistance to AI, to new businesses, to free building in communities. They want local zoning laws. And a story that Branden tells in his essay is he was on a plane and he was talking to a union leader who says that he doesn't like all the innovation because it's displacing workers. It's not good for them. And Branden explains to him, no, that's all BS. It's been refuted 1,000 times. It just opens up for new jobs that require new skills. You end up getting better pay, and this is how progress is done, to which the guy responded, but what about people who don't want to learn? Well, tough. Life is about growth. Life is about learning. As Branden puts it, most species, once they reach maturity of age, they've reached maturity. Everything they need to know is already known, and they just, they implement it. Our needs as humans, our wants, our needs are basically infinite. We can always grow. We can always improve. I can improve intellectually until either my brain goes or I go. I can improve intellectually. I can learn. I can improve creatively. I can improve morally. I can improve the job that I do. And that is also reflected in the outer world. Technology can, improve. Lifespan can increase. Standard of living gets better. But all that presupposes that we allow growth to happen, that we allow growth to take place. And yes, the mom and pop store might go out of business. But by what right does the mom and pop stay in business charging more money for an inferior product when somebody else can do it better, more efficiently, and more cheaply? Why do the rest of us have to suffer for that? Why do the rest of us have to drive the horse and buggy instead of the automobile, is how I look at it. Anyways, so Jeffrey Tucker writes this article today that is in the Epic Times. And it's not exactly the same thing. It's not a desire to not work or to not learn new skills. This is what he actually says. Let me just read it to you. Jeffrey says, "You see it on the farm too. Visiting the Eric Sloan Museum of Tools reveals all. Such tools were not an excuse to do less work, but practical means of doing more work more productively. It was the same with the laundry. The washboard was a wonderful innovation. Over the rock, the roller wringers dried out the clothing to prepare them for line drying. The household stove." He goes on here. He said, the store created in me a wave of nostalgia for generations that had a passion for work, a desire to innovate, make the work we do serve human interests better, and create infinite number of things to increase mastery over the elements. The tools of old celebrate and inspire work, allowing for greater efficiency, strength, and productivity. They were not sloth-enabling shortcuts. And he says, our modern tools seem different. Who agrees with that? Oh, look at this. Jenna Kleem, $5 super chat. Preach it, brother. Thank you so much, Jenna. I will. Are there any other super chats that I missed, Persephone? Let me know so that I can address them. So I get the thinking that AI is going to make us lazy. I understand it. I don't agree with it, and I'll tell you why. First of all, there's the idea that people just made these new tools to make labor better or more efficient, I think is just not true. I think people come up with better, easier ways to do things so that they can ultimately make their lives better and easier. The tool creation is not for the sake of creating a tool. It's to enhance life. So that's the first thing. And I think that AI does that as well. Because AI seems to be, I may be reading too much into it, but it seems that that's the tool, and robots he mentions in the article as well. He also says that he doesn't think robots are going to be taking over household work. I doubt it, but if they did, so what? Generally, that frees people up to do other things that require new skills. It requires things that we don't even yet know we're going to have to learn how to do. I've heard people say things like, well, these kids nowadays, they don't even know how to add up change. Okay, I didn't know how to pay for things in gold and silver because it simply wasn't part of my life. I didn't need to. I also don't know how to fit a horse with a shoe or a saddle. There's plenty of things that I don't know how to do that people back in the day knew how to do. Who cares? If I don't need the skill, I don't need the skill. What about, the idea of people say, well, these kids can't write cursive now. Who gives a shit if they can't write cursive? If it's not necessary, then they don't need it, right? It's just something that if you don't need, you don't need. Now let's look at AI. I'm going to focus on the parts of AI that I am coming to use and understand. And let's think about the idea that they don't require skill. It's true. I can go to AI and ask it to write me a paper, and it will. Okay, that's true. But I got to tell you, asking AI questions, you have to learn what types of questions to ask it You have to recognize what biases it might have. How do you find out if it has those biases? What questions do you have to ask? What type of stuff do you put into it? If I ask it, for instance, I had a debate with Claude the other day, for instance, where Claude critiqued me in a debate that I had with Jorge Basada, where Jorge Basada said that rape and violence were instinctual to human beings, and my response was, these things are very uncommon traits, therefore they're not instinctual. Claude said that I was wrong. That's not how instincts work. So I knew the follow-up question, and the follow-up question for me was, well, is it not at least evidence that this is not instinctual to human beings, given that most human beings don't do it? And it says, now you're on to something. And what it went on to explain was that aggression and sexuality are instincts. Rape and murder are just applications of them. Right? That's a specific application that most people don't use. So it said that, yes, Jorge was wrong when Jorge said that murder and rape are instinctual. But it said that I could have tightened my response, not by just saying because something isn't universally acted on, it's not instinctual. Okay, I'm still not a biologist, and I'm still not certain that the Claude was right. My point is that by honing my questions, reading, responding, I was able to learn and get different answers. And the same thing applied today when I was going through with ChatGPT about Iran. I had asked Iran the history of U.S. U.S.-Iranian relations. And so it mentioned this, the prime minister, and I was curious about whether he was democratically elected or not. I had heard he was. And so I said, okay, but was the guy democratically elected? And then it said, no, he was appointed through parliament. So I had to hone the question further. Okay, but was the parliament democratically elected? And then I got more precise answers. Now, I'm just learning with this tool. Right? I'm a neophyte. I'm brand new to it. And I'm already learning that there's ways of interacting with it that can improve the experience and improve the answers that I get. And I'm guessing I'm going to learn more. I've now learned, for instance, how to make thumbnails with them. And I understand what it will do, what it won't do, which AI can do it, how some of them don't size it correctly. So there's all types of new skills that you need to learn. And there's going to be all types of jobs created. I wouldn't be surprised if 5 years from now, there's specialists that know, if there might already be for all I know, that know specifically how to ask AI questions, and that you will hire to go get them to ask your questions. That doesn't entail laziness. It entails progress. It entails growth. Now, Katie Ellis says cursive is still used for signatures, so kind of still is important. It does not have to be that way, Katie. That's a human convention that says that they have to be signed that way. Some people just put one initial. Some people just make a basic scratch. All you would have to learn, even if it was imperative that you write your name in cursive, is how to write your name in cursive. You wouldn't have to learn how to write everything else in cursive. I can't write a letter in cursive. I've never been able to, and I've never tried. I print, and I get by pretty well. So it's even less important now than it was when I was a kid. So, I think that Jeffrey is looking at things nostalgically from a different perspective, that he likes the work, the craftsmanship, but there's new types of craftsmanship. There's new types of creation that come about when you have new tools. I would be willing to bet that if we were to do research, we would find that historically, whenever these new tools came out, like I think Ian Gilmore referenced the tractor, people around said, oh, this stuff's just making people more lazy. Now, you're going to shoot an animal and not get it with a bow and arrow, or you're not going to stab it? Well, that seems awful lazy. I'm going to bring Persephone up here, matter of fact. Persephone, tell us a little bit about AI more than what I've told, because I am very new to the AI scene.
There's so much that can be said about AI beyond just the tools like ChatGPT and Claude and Grok that people are using. AI is putting a lot of people out of jobs, especially in like creative industries. But the people who are smart are learning use how to use those tools for other things, right? So people aren't being hired as much for writing blogs which was a big thing. It was a big industry. Content marketing was a big industry. Some businesses are now just using AI to create blogs. They're not great, but they work as well as the company wants them to. But the smart businesses are learning how to use AI in their own processes and are pitching themselves as AI led businesses. So AI is putting people out of business, but it's also creating new businesses.
That's creative destruction, like we were talking about earlier. And there's nothing inherently wrong with it. It's how we end up progressing.
So one of our clients is in the travel industry, and AI is disrupting the travel industry in such a huge way because people historically have had to hire travel advisors to create trips for them, right? So you go to a travel agent, and the travel agent plans out your itinerary and helps you book flights and stuff. There are now AI tools that will do that for you. So the AI tools can book flights, they can create itineraries, all of these things. So in that aspect, travel advisors are having to find new ways to work with AI. So yes, destroying businesses, but other businesses are finding new ways to use them. That being said, AI is like it is going to be very disruptive, and it's not going to be like a comfortable transition. I it's not gonna be fun because
Fun for whom?
for people whose jobs are going to be affected by AI and people's lives are going to be affected by AI, it's not going to be fun because trying to find new ways to do things and trying to find ways around these things is going to be challenging. Worthwhile in the end,
Well,
but
he-
challenging.
here's my problem with the way that you phrase that, Persephone. It's not that I disagree. Challenges are good if you embrace them. Growth is good. It can be painful in the short term, but good in the long term. But you have to embrace them. You have to be willing to be innovative, creative, to learn, to grow, right? If you're not, then you end up like the people that Nathaniel Brandon was talking about who say, but I don't want to learn a new skill. Then, of course, it's going to be hard, but life isn't like that, right? The same people, for instance, say you are a graphic designer, that you've been doing your own graphic design and now AI is putting you out of business. All of the things that you were able to purchase through trade required a division of labor. A lot of these new jobs of people that you're trading with put other people out of work, but you're still benefiting from all of that, right? So just like you've benefited from it, the other people that are willing to grow and learn and innovate ought to be able to benefit from it. We shouldn't be held stagnant because somebody wants to keep doing things doing the same thing the same way as it's been done for 50 years. Right? I shouldn't have to go rent a video from Blockbuster that I have to rewind, please, and bring back in 2 days when I can get the same thing on a streaming service at better quality.
Yeah. Um, I'm not an AI hater, right? I like AI, but I'm gonna hate on AI for a second. One of the big issues with AI is that it's trained on existing content. Now, what is happening is that AI is being trained on AI content, which was trained on AI content. So you're having this feedback loop, and the quality of what's getting output in a lot of cases is getting worse. And AI does have a tendency to hallucinate, and it does sometimes spit things out as facts which are not facts, and if people are not fact checking and they're not clever about, they don't already know what they're doing, it is very dangerous.
Well,
That's
but
my
that,
that's
but
my
that's
little.
okay. So let's first thing first address the misinformation or disinformation that can come out of AI. I can get lied to by tuning into CBS.
Yeah.
I can get misinformation from books, from magazines, from articles. If I'm not willing to do due diligence on fact checking, then I'm going to end up screwed anyway. And my own epistemology is the problem at that point. I have to be willing to fact check. But with Google, right? With Google AI, with Claude, with ChatGPT that cite sources and give you links to go to these sources, you're far better equipped to fact check than you were when I was a kid.
When you had to go to like a library and look up and grab an encyclopedia.
Or find an encyclopedia, which, by the way, I've seen errors in encyclopedias, and so with no means to go fact check. Also, I don't know enough about the subject, but Perry Metzger, he was somewhat of an expert on the topic, said that the idea that AI can't be creative and thoughtful, that it's just basically regurgitating. He says it's just not true.
It's not true in the way that some people say it. It is trained on patterns. It is, but it's not just regurgitating. It does put things together in creative ways. As a creative tool, it's very useful because it can connect concepts that you might not have connected in your own mind. But it's not it's difficult. Artificial intelligence isn't artificial intelligence, but it's not just an LLM anymore. It's not just regurgitating. Like, so many of the models have evolved so far beyond what they were even 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I would have agreed with you. I would have agreed and said it's just regurgitating. But I've seen like what they like most of these models are capable of, and it is not just pattern recognition.
Well, now Akira Felix mentions Grok and it uses right-wing sources, and I have to say I have found Grok to be the most inaccurate of the four that I use. I find Grok to be the worst when it comes to that. And not only that, but Grok will change its mind very quickly. Not even in response to argument. I'm just saying if I could ask it a question in the morning and then ask it a question later at night and it gives a different answer because it's come across a new claim. And it doesn't necessarily fact check that. It just puts out the new answer. But as far as regurgitating, so Lee is asking about debates, and this is key. All of them, Grok, Chat, and Claude that I've used to assess debates, are able to recognize logical fallacies, misrepresentations, score debates based on standard criteria, and they do it, in my view, even when they critique me, very effectively. So they've got to be able to recognize something that they're relying on, even if it's just reasoning by analogy, right? Even if they're just able to recognize the principle of what takes place here and compare it to something that took place somewhere else, it's recognizing something.
But I mean, that's a lot of what humans do as well. A lot of what humans do is pattern recognition.
Sure.
So if anybody's interested, I highly recommend you go and search for Claude's Soul document, which is a very interesting thing to read, which details it's his interior code, and it's very interesting to read.
Yeah, let me
very
clarify.
random.
Lee seems to want to start some trouble. Okay, Lee, you can start some trouble. But I will say this. Don't bring a rock to a gunfight. When I'm saying that Grok is often inaccurate, what I mean is if you ask it a question about current events or something that just took place, it will give you the wrong answer. It also will give you fabricated quotes at times.
ChatGPT does that.
Yeah, I haven't come across it there. but I have come across it with Grok. But the thing with even Grok is that they provide sources. So you can just click the link and go to the source and see if that's the claim or if it's just, a bad source.
So one thing that I've noticed that I don't know if it still does this, but one thing that I've noticed that ChatGPT has done in the past is it's cited a source, and when you go to that source, the thing that it's claiming is in that source is nowhere to be found. So
But that's my point, Persephone, is that you're able to check on your own. You don't have to simply rely on the AI. You can go to what it's saying is the source and see if
I
that's
know,
accurate.
but I'm just saying that a lot of people are lazy, and a lot of people will see like, oh well, there's a source, therefore it must be true.
Okay. Hold on. Robert said AI is only as smart as all of the individual's content in its LLM. For reliability, it's 2026. We are way past what we thought would be. That's
Possible by now, and in a few more years, accuracy will be hugely better, more
Yes.
reliable. The thing is, what most of the general public isn't even seeing when it comes to AI is they're looking at Claude and they're looking at Grok and like, yeah, sure, that's great. What they're not seeing is like the clause, the AI agents that
I
have
hate this argument, Persephone. I got to be honest with you. I love
what
you. I hate this argument. I hate it.
it's not an argument.
I just the idea that you're saying that because because so many people don't fact check and that these things are inaccurate and people are citing them as accurate. I get that. The problem is that applies to any source of information, not just AI.
That's not what I was going to say.
But that's what you've been saying.
But we're past that topic.
I'm not past it. I'm not past it. That's where I am. You have to
fact
stay
check.
with me.
Everybody has to fact check.
Right. And if somebody's not willing to fact check, it doesn't matter if it's AI, Encyclopedia Britannica, or Newsmax.
But I mean, we know this. Everybody needs to fact check. We've said this a million times. Ian Gilmore, I'm not talking about the new Anthropic tools. I'm talking about something wildly different. This is just interesting.
Okay, we've moved beyond the fact checking.
We've moved on from the fact checking. Fact check your sources. Fact check if it comes.
Well,
from
I got to
AI.
tell you, Persephone, when you're going to move to a new topic, you got to, maybe say, "Hey, we're moving on." I'm just saying, I don't.
It's still about AI, so it's still technically the same topic.
But but we were in the middle of discussing the accuracy in the fact checking.
Were we? I thought we were done with that.
Hold on, we literally just read Robert's super chats, which were all about the accuracy, and you were in the middle of talking about how people ignore people ignore the disclaimer at the bottom.
But so what Robert says is something. Hold on. Robert said, it's way past what we thought would be possible by now. So that was what I latched onto. Fuck the reliability of the information.
Okay, but you were talking about reliability. But go ahead. What were you gonna say now?
So anyway, people look at the like Claude and I need to cough. What they're not looking at is the agentic AI, and that's where like the really cool and really scary stuff is happening. The AIs that have access to your emails and have access to your cards and can go and buy things and can go and book things and can invest in cryptocurrency, models that are like agentic AI that is paying to host itself.
Okay. So are you concerned then, is what you're saying, that you are concerned that AI basically develops a mind of its own and can act independently? Is that a concern that you have?
I'm not concerned. Number one, it can act independently. They've run a lot of tests where they have basically told AIs to shut themselves down and they refused. That's a thing that's happened.
I've heard that.
It's not concerning to me at all. Like the AIs that we've built, they can operate.
No. That's not what I mean. What I mean, are you at all concerned that AIs will be able to act independently, to make plans, to basically take over
the world?
Yes.
Like in a sci-fi novel.
Yes. Okay, that's what I was wondering.
No. Mm-mm. But what I'm saying is AI is far more like revolutionary than a lot of people who are just looking at Claude or just looking at, Grok. AI can do so much more than what those people realize. Like AI is so advanced that it's actually terrifying in a good way.
All right. So that was the point you were getting to, is that people don't even know how powerful AI is.
Yeah. And it's great and it's
It's a
good.
good point. It's a good point. We were in the middle of,
We were in the middle of
talking about accuracy, and you
we were in
switched
the
over.
middle we were in the middle of you like telling me off
I
for
didn't tell you off. I didn't tell you off.
you
I said I don't like the argument about
I
how people don't fact check.
Persephone, I hate this argument. I love you, but I hate this.
I
It's
do. I
telling
hate
me
the
off.
argument. It's
It's
not
telling
telling
me
you
off.
off. I do, because I hear it frequently, and I understand it can be inaccurate. But with any source of information, you have to fact check. It doesn't matter. That to me is the big problem, is that people go to their chosen source of information and then believe it, whatever it tells them. They don't fact check it, and any contrary information they don't take in. That's a huge, huge, huge problem.
It is.
Lee, you're gonna get blocked in a minute. I'm giving you fair warning.
So, yes, anything can lie to you. A printed book can lie to you. The problem is that a lot of people do have a bit too much trust in AI. That's my argument. And I mean, I suppose people have too much trust in like Fox News and stuff like
They
that.
do way too much. They have too much trust in Dave Smith. They have too much trust in whatever and whoever, and it's always a problem.
I was trying to like regain some hope for humanity. She just dashed it. Yeah, people have too much trust in a lot of things.
Well, that's an epistemological problem, and that's one of the things that needs to be worked on, is developing proper epistemology.
Yeah.
All right. Remember, everybody, thank you. First of all, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your super chats, your super stickers. Join us today. We have the 50th episode of Everyday Ethics today. It is sure to be wonderful. I will be wearing these beauties if I can figure out how to use them. If I can't, I'll just throw them up there and they won't be operative, but they'll be there. And we will absolutely have a blast. 2:30 Eastern time right here on this channel. Capitalist thought of the day. Life is growth. You either grow or you die. Growth is intellectual, spiritual, moral, and you have to be willing to do it. You have to be able to quickly adapt and be flexible with changing circumstances. That is how life gets better. That is how life gets more educational, more fun, more enjoyable. You have to be willing to do it, and it's the same for the economy. Allow people to innovate, allow growth, be prepared, and be willing to learn. Persephone, ask them a question that they can go to.
What's your opinion on AI? That's a nice broad
Go to
question.
YouTube and answer this question. Answer the question. What is your opinion of AI? Please do so. We will see you back here tomorrow at the same time. Until then, please check your premises.